You're up.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this rather unusual session, we think. I'm Norman Fall. I'm a long-term student of the Toyota production system, and I'm with Alex Hamilton.
So I'm Alex Hamilton. I'm the CEO and founder of Radiant Law, which is the law firm we're going to be talking about today. I have to say I'm a little bit nervous here. I'm very used to going into rooms full of managing partners who are amongst the better earning member of the population and telling them their business model's wrong. But now I'm dealing with serious and grown-up individuals like Norman here, who probably explains why he stopped me from calling us. This talk is Kill All the Lawyers, the optimal starting point for any process. So I'm going to kick off with a little bit of background about what Radiant Law is. And then Norman's going to talk about his experiences exposed so cruelly to a law firm for so long and the journey we've been on. And I think the story starts in 2009 when I used to be a traditional lawyer. I did kind of big contracts, outsourcing contracts, technology deals. And I was a partner at a big American law firm. And as a very junior partner, I'd written this memo to the executive committee, or a mission statement from Jerry Maguire, suggesting that we might actually do some innovation. They ignored me and went on to make a huge amount, really quite obscene amount of money by ignoring me. So perhaps not the best advice. But the problem was at that point, I'd kind of believed my own bullshit. And so in 2011, I launched Radiant Law as a new kind of law firm. And in the run-up to that launch, if you'd met me in any bar or coffee shop across London, I would have drawn you a picture like this or arranged 3 glasses on the bar and saying that what the world needs, if we're really going to meet clients' needs, is some combination of the judgment calls that you get from law firms, the technology capabilities to build tech that you get in a tech company, and the process skills you get from what's called a legal process outsourcing company. So these are one of these companies that started off by that point, effectively pilot high, sell it cheap to some extent, probably in India, supporting law firms, but at least starting to open the door that not everything might be done by just lawyers. And what I meant by taking process seriously, I think I would now describe as lean. And so from our very beginning, we believe that the way that lawyers work, which is, I admit, a little bit haphazard, might be done more thoughtfully and measuredly. Anyway, so that was the picture I was drawing. Run forwards 10 years, and Radiant Law is doing quite well, actually. We've grown to about, I think we're about to be 60 people. It's growing very fast right now. We are technically an English law firm. I say technically because most of the team is in Cape Town. We've got a small group in Joburg. I've just told Norman that we're opening in Trinidad in January. And we've got software developers around the kind of the Eastern Europe and the Far East. And we are focused on 2 things. We do day-to-day contracts. That means we act for big banks, big companies with their day-to-day contracts. And so they'll effectively outsource to us all of their sales contracts or procurement contracts, their kind of business contracts that get negotiated. And then we also do what's called contract projects. So that's lots of contracts that need to be updated because the laws change typically. We are a very young team. It feels, in fact, I refer to it regularly like it's the children's crusade. I suspect if I did the maths, which I don't want to, the average age of the company would probably be less than 30. We're very proud to be a B corporation. And I think, we're taking an unusual path of not only being a company rather than a partnership, which I'll come to in a second, but also trying to be what I would think of as one of the more forward-looking companies in terms of emphasis on self-management, a teal company, if you're reinventing organization terminology. But yeah, the 2 big things that I think are super important to start with about what's different about Radiant Law it's all come back to incentives. And Charlie Munger famously said, never ever think about anything else when you should be thinking about the power of incentives. And I think that in order for Radiant Law to go on a lean journey, we had to start by looking at that. And we've done it in two key ways. The first is no timesheets. So Radiant only charges on a fixed price output basis. We don't have an hourly rate. We refuse to give clients one if they ask. We've no bid very large companies who have insisted on it. And then the second thing that we've changed, because I mean, this should be obvious to this audience, but obviously if you measure hours, you'll get hours. If you effectively incentivize people to spend more time to do stuff so they get paid more, guess what will happen, right? So I would argue that it's impossible to do really to be serious about process improvement if you don't charge by the hour. Sorry, if you charge by the hour. As an examples, right? I was talking to a senior guy who's been doing Lean for a long time, who talked about how he'd been brought by a law firm to help, and surprise, surprise, he was asked to go talk to the finance department and look at that. He couldn't talk to the lawyers because obviously the lawyers would think he's insane. And then the other key thing is that we're not a partnership. And this is a little bit more subtle than the obviousness of incentivizing hours creates waste. But we are a company, a very flattish company. Robert Keidel has this wonderful triangle. Basically says, you got to choose one of these three, which you bias towards in your organization. I guess that the lean world often deals with organizations that came out of the control world and tries to pull them towards cooperation. The partnerships in law firms is very much in the autonomy world. I mean, not if you're a junior lawyer, you do whatever you're told, but if you're a partner, you basically can do whatever you want. And this raises serious problems actually when trying to get lean really embedded into a partnership, which people have tried. There are law firms that have tried this famously. There are a couple of reasons. One is all the partners have their own way of doing everything, right? And they jealously guard that freedom, which means that in the most famous example, I won't name the firm, but it's well known for having gone down a lean path, American firm. When you talk to people inside, they went, yeah, really, we made a lot of headway with this bit and that bit, but we couldn't get to a whole bunch of departments or partners within a department because they just ignored it. So you don't really have the ability to push stuff down in a partnership. And then the inverse of that is partnerships, the kind of the management, the executive, I guess in lean terms, are very much there at the whim of the partnership who can change them in a heartbeat. And that law firm I mentioned famously machine gun basically everyone interesting at the firm that was doing stuff on the lean journey after a long time, and they had some really good progress because the partnership structure change, or there was a election change of senior partner, and the new one's management that came in was utterly focused on cost savings. Ironically. So at Radiant, we're very much a company, not a partnership, and very much focused on the cooperation end of this triangle. For example, we don't give individual bonuses, it's just 10% to the whole firm. Everyone's a shareholder. There's no real competition within the firm making progress. Everyone kind of progresses, in a very kind of flattish way. We don't have our management hierarchy. All of it is about trying to create a space where lean and actually caring about quality and doing things differently could gather root. So I'm going to turn over to Norman now to tell his story about what it's like joining us. And I think you joined us how long ago did you start working with us?
Just about 3.5 years ago.
3.5 years ago. So a bit of context for that, I would say that it took us 7 years to even figure out this stuff and just build something that vaguely worked that Norman could then work with.
Okay, thanks, Alex. So it was about 3.5 years ago that I was invited to lunch by a London CEO of a law firm. When I arrived at lunch, there was a lad in T-shirt and jeans. We talked about lean. I said, what do you think lean is? And he said, it's about elimination of waste. And we had a discussion and we agreed that it was maybe more about creating thinking people. We sort of agreed that we would work together. which came as a surprise to me, and it was followed by bafflement as to why really they would want to involve me. But there was a beginning. And what I got very early on was that Alex had this vision, the idea that over time, delivery agents, who are the lawyers who draft the contracts and deal with the matters, would spend fewer and fewer hours on the direct delivery and more time on continuous improvement and developing the business. I went into the engagement with Radiant Law with lots of questions. Prior to my very first visit on site here in Cape Town, I made a list of 18 questions, like what do clients value and how standardized are their processes? Well, in terms of the clients, what's the relationship between cost and quality and delivery speed, delivery reliability, and cost again? And how standardized are processes? Well, every matter is unique. And then after my first visit, I had 24 questions. The main one being how to see the invisible, because virtually all the lawyers worked from home, came into the office for a few hours a week. And how was I going to grasp the current condition with so little apparent data? So one of the early ideas was this time bar that said, time to close is really important to everybody, time to close the deal. But where is most of the time? Well, it's not while the matter is with Radiant Law. And in this bar, you will see a progression over a very long period of time. And the blue lines are the time devoted to working on the contract. And you can see it's a very minor proportion of the total time. So this could be a possible problem statement in terms of customer value. The deals take an average of X days to close with a potential revenue loss to the client of, let's say, Y dollars per day, and to the counter client of Z dollars per day. And therefore, the cost of closure versus a one-day closure is given by that little formula. So there's a cost to postponing value flowing. And the shape of the distribution of the time spent working on in order to bring to closure is very distributed like this, but this is not real data. It's just a speculative view of what happens. Small number of deals take a very long time. So after my very first visit, I made a rough sketch of what I was told it was the way they worked. And then in due course, we got up on a whiteboard in the company's office in Cape Town. And you'll see that we did a swim lane map with the client's client, the client's business person, Radiant Law intake, a kind of triage, the drafting lawyer, the quality assurance, which the drafting lawyer might call for, and then also the client's legal department. And apart from anything else, one's got to say who's the customer in all of this. It's a very interrelated activity. So what tools and concepts was I bringing to the party? And by no means did I walk in with a toolkit on day one. It's been an ongoing discovery process of, do I understand the work? What can help us understand the work? So Gerard Ishikawa of the fishbone diagram also had a 40-40-20 rule, where he said that 40% of the problems that one experiences in an organization are actually rooted in the design of the product. So of course, in this case, the product is a contract. And therefore one needs to simplify and simplify and simplify. Now, Alex had already come to that conclusion and continues to work on simplifying contracts. 40% of the problems are also rooted in the suppliers. So in this case, it's the clients who are suppliers. So one's looking to monitor percentage complete and accurate on the briefs that arrive. And so one's looking to the governance call that will take place between Radiant Law lawyers and the clients, increasingly done with data to show how incomplete and inaccurate information up front simply delays the time to closure. And then only 20% of the problems are rooted in your own operations. And this, of course, is where the good old classic plan, do, check, act, A3's problem solving comes in. We didn't really get traction with that until we got the Toyota Cutter stuff going. Now, another way of trying to understand what's going on here are the 3 M's of Muri, Mura, and Muda, and the realization that fluctuation in the work, the nature of the work, was probably enemy number 1, and we needed to stabilize the way work is done. And some genius came up with this idea. I may be sitting next to him, but would never say that. I came up with the idea of stable slots in the day when interruptions would be minimized and deep work could take place, achieving a much more stable and better quality work. And you'll see also its effect on getting back a draft to the client. So constantly in Radiant Law, as in any organization that's pursuing a lean transformation, is this dynamic between standardization and experimentation. That if you don't standardize, you've got no basis for improvement, but if you get stuck on standardization, you never get improvement. So another kind of a thought we had over time was that every individual delivery agent, every individual lawyer is a factory on their own. And at the one end of the business, we've got the clients who submit their requests for a contract through a thing called the legal front door, which then delivers to an intake lawyer who is essentially doing triage to see, is this complete and accurate? Is this matter within the scope of what we deal with? And then making that matter available in a kind of Kanban environment. And the lawyers work with the systems that Radiant Law is constantly developing and evolving, working with playbooks, and of course, the recipients of training in the use of those systems and the use of the playbook and the skill of drafting accurately and quality and timeously. And on the right-hand side there, you see the Toyota Cutter book of Mike Rother. So this diagram also shows us that the obstacles that Mike would talk about are of 3 kinds here. There are client-specific obstacles, there are the systemic obstacles, and the system side of this business is constantly evolving. And then at the individual lawyer, the factory of 1 level, there are personal and situational obstacles in pursuing the delivery rapidly and of good quality to clients. So some of the breakthroughs that have happened here, a visit to a Toyota dealership. I think there's a parallel session going on right now, talking about the Halfway Toyota lean journey. And spending a morning there had a real impact on staff here and on Alex in particular. Another breakthrough was playing the cut-up domino game and really getting a sense for the first time of how this could work in Radiant Law. And very quickly, there was a cutter meeting taking place each week for about 20 minutes per account, and obstacles were being tackled. And then finally, visual management has a breakthrough activity, getting the lawyers themselves to record more accurately as they moved matters from one state to another. And then we have this wonderful magician in the firm, Joe, who manipulates the data, presents it in compelling ways, and the feedback has been powerful. So the Mike Rother diagram strategy and execution. In this organization, the execs establish the overall direction and the purpose of the organization to fix the contracting problem, and set a challenge, quarterly challenges, which then I've put in managers in parentheses because it's a flat organization, but there's a working at those obstacles to move towards the challenge. And really at this point, I'm going to hand back to Alex to talk about some of what's been achieved.
So let me talk a little bit about stabilization. And this bar represents 2 days, right? First, second day. And the reason I'm showing you 2 days is because, a little bit of context, I think we're all used to lawyers causing pain and generally not known as the fastest on the planet at getting stuff done. A little bit of general data on this. The average time, according to one survey, to turn around a contract by an in-house team, a team at a company, was 30.5 days. Another survey had top quartile departments turning them in 11.5 days. The managed legal services industry, which we service, best in class for a service level is 2 days. So if you outsource to a company like Radiant and you get a 2-day service level, you're already way ahead of what you might have been used to as a company. But what I'm showing you is what happens in those 2 days. So the first day we found was that people would just deal with the stuff that they had to get out that day, and that they would therefore go home at night feeling guilty about all the stuff that they have to get out the next day, right? We built a system which basically they were actually doing the work, the yellow, at the end of the second day, at the point when it had to go out, and were constantly feeling stressed and constantly feeling like they were behind. And even worse, you'd often see this picture where the lawyers were being constantly pulled by meetings and messages on Slack and Outlook and what have you, and therefore picking up and putting down contracts. So they might do a little bit on the first day, and they put it down, and they get back to it, and so on. And this is dangerous. This is super dangerous in our world because it's not like we're in the rocket science business. It's just law and contracts, right? But you actually, when you're dealing with a contract, dealing with a deal, you kind of need to load a bunch of stuff into your short-term memory. This is how it all fits together. This is the context I'm sitting about on this deal. So if you're constantly kind of uploading and downloading, that information, you are going to make mistakes. So it's super dangerous. So what you really want to do is operate like this. You just want to get it done at the beginning of the first day and sent out, right? This is optimal. And what was super interesting when we went around and asked the team is that it was pretty wide consensus that pretty much everything could be done in 2 hours. Right? So 2 hours, and often less, but like 2 hours was, would get 90% of the matters covered. And that was interesting. So this is where we came up with what we call the slots. So what we did was we reorganized the firm's calendar, and we basically said that between 10 and 12 in the morning, South Africa time, and 2 and 4 in the afternoon, South Africa time, we would have no meetings. We asked people to switch off their emails. We actually even built a button for them. None of the buggers are using it, but we built a button for them to actually stop them from sending and receiving emails. But the whole point was just breathe, focus. This is knowledge work, right? For which, by the way, you can only really do about 5 hours a day. I think kind of the studies roughly show, right? The idea of people billing 12-hour days is hilarious. And just take those 2 hours and just do some good work, right? Just pick up the matter, get it done, line up before that matter. You got to have a little. We talk about a factory of one, and I think that's absolutely right. And Norman's observation is incredibly helpful for how we reason about it. But you basically need to line stuff up with intake, and then if you need some help with some points, QA afterwards, then you can do that. We talked about the magician, Joe and his data. This is an example of the data we're now operating at. We can see for any matter when each line represents a matter here, when it arrived, whether it was done during the slots or not, whether it got out on time, whether intake was completed on time. And it's given us incredible visibility. And this visibility into the data has had a transformative impact. So I'll show you. This is the grid of glory, which is, we have very silly names already. Our meeting rooms, by the way, are named after Bond villains. This is showing across the firm on each account is basically clients' collection of contracts, how we're doing for each half day over the last 6 days. And we're now giving this access to this information to the team every day. I did this on the weekends, so I didn't have Fridays yet. And this real-time impact had a huge impact. So like I said, average is 30 days, top quartile in a company is 11 days, best in class when you go out to the market is 2 days. And we're running, this is percentage, we're now running, our challenge we set originally in the Toyota Takata was 75% in half a day. And we're now averaging 89% in half a day, of which we are a little bit proud. But the good news is, I know Lean's all about humility and leadership, is that everywhere we look, we have lots of reasons to maintain our humility. I think we've barely started on our journey. We have a running joke, the head of delivery and I, every end of every year, we'll look back at what we thought we knew at the beginning of the year and laugh at ourselves, whilst knowing that we'll do the same the following year. And we have been doing this for years now. But this is kind of where we've got to. And on that note, I think we've got 3 minutes left. So do we have any questions? Are there any questions? I don't know how best to maybe put it into the chat or the Q&A. Otherwise, you can just admire this picture for the next 3 minutes. I'm pretty proud of it. No, I'm waiting for someone. Any other observations from you about working with these mad women?
Well, it's been extraordinary to see how things come together constantly, and it's about exposing problems. Why are things not working? The trends aren't always in the direction we want them.
Got one. How did you start on the Toyota Takata? Well, this is I'll start this one.
Yeah.
So Norman sat us down, explained it to us, and all the rest of it, and everyone just looked at him with a blank look, as I remember this story, and just ignored us for 3 months, right? I mean, we just got no traction, and I mean, the fundamental challenge we've got is going to the Gemba is pretty hard in a law firm, especially one where everyone's at home all the time. Because although you can ask to share their screen and so on, which is the best you're going to do, it's really hard to see what's going on. And we have a system, we track everything, which all this data is coming out of Flow. But I don't think anyone really understood what we're doing, and we certainly didn't have the data necessary in the system. You know, that's a very clear phenomenon. Yeah. And then we had the domino game, right? That was the transformative moment. So why don't you talk about that? Because we were lucky on the timing on that.
Well, we get lucky all the time. It was about 2 years ago, running towards the end of the year, and we were talking about what to do next year. And we decided we would do a bit of training around Lean, and we were going to use a game that has more to do with flow. And then at the last minute, I thought, I think the domino game, the cutter domino game. And so we did that early in the year, and it worked. People got it. They really got it. And then the company also moved offices, and a lot was happening. Also,
we went into lockdown, so we were within weeks of lockdown.
Well, fortunately, we were able to play the game before COVID came along, and so we began doing the cutter meetings physically, and had a few weeks of that when lockdown came, but we were able to transition very smoothly into the virtual environment. So it was the game that got us started.
And Shepa, you asked a question about quality returns. That's a super good question. We have so much progress we can make there. I think currently we have about 3 returning, we call them returning matters after the first round, that new matter. We have a ratio of about 3 to 1 returning matters. I think a large proportion of this is pure waste, right? Either we're setting things up so we haven't got the information right before we start doing the work and we have to check things, or we're sending out unreasonable terms that are creating unnecessary rounds of negotiations. And we have a huge focus on being reasonable in contracts and helping our clients on a journey to be more reasonable, frankly, which explains a lot of the overall how you speed up contracting. But the answer is we have tons of opportunity returns, and it's also a huge productivity opportunity. I mean, I'm pretty sure that we could get to a stage, maybe it's going to take us 3 years, maybe 5 years, but where we've probably halved the amount of returning matters that we need to deal with, which basically gives you a clear pathway, even if without just thinking about how we can improve doing the work and all the rest of it, which there are tons of opportunities to. Everywhere it's waste in a law firm. We could probably double productivity just there. I mean, our team is probably twice as productive as a typical in-house lawyer in terms of number of contracts they're doing. It's very hard to get an in-house team to actually be able to count how many contracts they do. They count in very weird ways. But our best guess from actually picking into it is we're probably doing about twice as many per lawyer. And our whole system is designed so that we get rid of everyone, send them to the pub at 6 p.m. Right? If you miss 6:01, your contract's late, so get out of here. So we're trying to create a culture of not working late, of doing interesting stuff, being very much part of continuous improvement. And that's a great point. We have tons of opportunities there. Any more? No, we got that there. Awesome. I think we're up at the end of our time. Thank you very much for joining this session, and we appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Hope you got something from that.